The Doctor has his own mind palace. I shall name it the Mind TARDIS. Patent pending. So, Heaven Sent, or as I like to call it, Stephen Moffat doing more Sherlock. Yeah, this bears a lot of resemblance to Sherlock, and if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll get to it later. But first, the cast. This is going to be a short one. Pete Capaldi as the Doctor. Well, this was sort of a given, really. He does really well. He really had to, or this episode would just massively fail. He's essentially talking to himself, or a bloke in a cloth. Which is good. He actually manages to convey a lot of emotion, considering most of it's just him, and no one else. And this is a very brave move. And those Mind TARDIS scenes, they're really good as well. But I'll get to those later. The Veil, played by Jamie Reed Correll, who played Colony Sarf in The Magician's Apprentice. Well, he does very good at walking really slowly. Yeah, you can't really say much about him, he just walks. And reaches out for the Doctor. He does that very sinisterly as well. Stephen Moffat is the writer. He does well. This is one of his better stories, considering his last, or Magician's Apprentice and Witch's Familiar, weren't that well. They just weren't living up to the hype of the series opener. And Rachel Talali's back as the director. As usual, she makes it look very cinematic. And good thing is she's back next week, so she's gonna be tackling Gallifrey. That'll be good. But onto the story. I enjoyed it, considering sometimes you'd think that you'd get bored of just Peter Capaldi on his own ranting, but he doesn't, and you don't, and you get to see him thinking, and that sort of builds up a 55-minute story. You can't just skip any bit out. You can't really do any scene with the Veil like some villains when they're just plotting, or a scene when they kill a henchman or anything. You have to focus on the Doctor for most of that time, and that's why I think when he's punching through that Asbantian wall, they go on with that montage of him just repeating that over and over again for a while, and they literally just carry on that story about a sentence at a time, which is really good. But I should talk about this. If you watched Sherlock and you saw the series 3 finale, you will know that the scene when the Doctor jumps out of his castle and ends up in his Mind TARDIS, or his Mind Palace, that is essentially identical to when Sherlock was shot and he needs to find the correct way to fall. Or context, he needs to find a way to fall so he doesn't fall unconscious and doesn't lose too much blood. And during those Mind Palace scenes, they are both talking to somebody. They are both falling. Sherlock talks to his brother and Moriarty. The Doctor just talks to the back of Clara's head. And I know Stephen Moffat is the head writer of Sherlock, but Do you really think a Scottish alien with a time machine that can travel in space and is bigger on the inside, just talking to a back of his dead companion's head, is really all the difference you need? And essentially, this probably happens whenever what Stephen Moffat wanted to do with Sherlock. I get the feeling, like anytime Sherlock's about to get shot, he goes into his mind palace like, right, what do we do? Except this time, he's onto his mind TARDIS. But they are really well done, I'll give them that. They are well shot, well performed, and I like it how the Doctor is seeing Clara in this whole thing, and no one else can. But when he's depressed, shall we say, and he's just ranting on about, oh, why can't I die? Some people would be annoyed that Clara's or Jenna Coleman came back, and I know one person I know was, but she's she's not real, people, and all she's there is just the classic hallucination of a dead person going, why are you still panicked? Why are you depressed? Just do it. Literally in this case. And I suppose that it was needed. Like, I don't really think that River would have done it, or a Shielder, she wouldn't have done it. But the setting of this episode was really interesting. The premise of the whole castle room's resetting. Except that wall. That could have been explained, or the sea, like, it could have been explained like one sentence, like, since this was a confession dial and it's obvious that somebody wanted him to find room 12, that he'd just say that the things that would, the clues, or the rooms with clues in, wouldn't. Or like the sea and the bird and the wall, they wouldn't reset because they needed him to get to Gallifrey. And that story about the old woman from his nightmares, that makes sense because it's his own personal hell. And the confessions, this is his confession dial apparently. Is this what every Time Lord goes through to make their confession dial? It's not like writing down a will or anything, it's you literally have to go through your own personal hell just to confess. If so, that's a lot of hard work. But, clever idea, and especially when time freezes, and then the wall opens so he can get past. Essentially, this episode is basically saying, look, Peter Capaldi's settled into his role, look what he can do. Interesting, when most time that happens with other Doctors, it's like a big monologue or an epic scene. This one is basically him on his own. Brave move, and it's interesting why Stephen Moffat didn't try this with anyone else. But what's also interesting is it seems like he's taking a lot of stuff from Sherlock, like the thinking scenes, the flashbacks while he's trying to deduce something, the mind palace. There is a lot of things similar to Sherlock. All it was missing was Benedict Cumberbatch. Although he would be good as the Doctor. Really, he would. But I digress. Anyway, the scenes which really stood out was the scene when he was crawling to the teleporter and the lights in the Mind TARDIS were going out, which was really clever. Essentially saying that he's dying, his mind shutting down. Which was a clever sign. And it's taking advantage of its later time slot once again by having the burn marks on the Doctor's face. That was really effective. And then the scene where it's like, I can't regenerate and it'll take me at least 1.5 days to get to the teleporter and up top of the tower. Peter Capaldi just sold this episode. Like, essentially it's one big massive monologue, and some scenes are essentially just silence. And what this episode was really relying on for it to succeed was Peter Capaldi and the music. And the music you can really notice the music this week. Sometimes you can't, but this time it was just amazing. Can't wait for the soundtrack for this episode. That'll amazing. But the flies for the veil. Yet I get it because I'm not sure whether it's the thing Stephen Moffat likes to do, and it's like, oh, you gotta notice this. That's when the monster's coming. Hint, hint. Or whether it's just, it's dead. There's a lot of it's rotten. Probably there's a lot of flies around it. The only time where I really noticed the flies being useful was when time froze. But I have to admit, the veil coming out of the grave, that was clever. And room 12. Does the rooms for the doctors keep changing with each doctor? I know room 11 was for the 11th Doctor and God Complex, and room 12, it's like Stephen Moffat's just like, oh, it's the same number as the Doctor. I'm clever. But this time, it was essentially home, which was clever, I admit, when he thought it was TARDIS and it turned out to be Gallifrey. That was clever. But I'm no science geek, and I can have suspension of disbelief, but I know there will be at least one person who was watching this episode is like, something that's 400 times stronger than diamond. Only thing you can break with diamond with is another diamond, so he shouldn't be able to break through that. I, on the other hand, I can let that pass. And it was clever how 21 trillion years, I think it was, somebody said online, was Doctor breaking through that wall, and the further he got, the further the story got, and essentially until he broke through and managed to get to Gallifrey. And the cliffhanger, that cliffhanger. Okay, this series, there have been a lot of hybrids, but less of the hybrid and more of a hybrid, like a Shielder and the Maya, like a human and Maya hybrid, a Zygon and human Maya hybrid, and a Dalek and Time Lord hybrid. That's it. There hasn't been a consistency of hybrid, it's just been hybrids, not the hybrid. There wasn't really a specific legend that went through the history, like Silence Will Fall. We heard about the legend in which is familiar, and we haven't seen it again. It's just been hybrids. But when the Doctor said, the hybrid is me, that I'm interested in. I really am. I'm not sure if he meant that was just a thing just to say so they got his attention, got their attention, like, oh hello, I'm the hybrid. Sort of like saying, bursting into the room and going, I'm the king of the world. They'll automatically look at you. And the way he said that if anyone asks, just say he came home the long way around. Clever. And now he's finally found Gallifrey. And this is just from the Next Time trailer, but it looks amazing in HD. And I'm so glad that Rachel Talali, who's works on films, is directing an episode that is completely set on Gallifrey. And I really think that a cinematic feel would be good for Gallifrey. I hope the series finale does well. I really do. Please, just don't let me down, Stephen Moffat. The series opener wasn't as good as I thought it was. Please, let the season finale be good. Please. But, overall, I give this episode a 9 out of 10. Because it is really good, and just the way it's directed, Stephen Moffat wrote it, it's one of his best episodes, and, well, it could be, depending on how hell-bent it is, it's either going to be joint first with Under the Lake and Before the Flood, or second as the best story of Season 9. And this one's going to be a close one. So, next week we've got Hell Bent on Gallifrey, with a Shielder, or she's probably going to be known as me, again. See you later.